1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts, the books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
Welcome back to The Author Has Thoughts. I am continuing my discussion of my short story collection set in my Cyberpunk universe, The Bridge Chronicles, called Tales from the Bridge Chronicles, Volume 1. Connection Keep Alive is another short story that was me wanting to expand a little bit on a character that was kind of a supporting character in If Tribe Equal and has been continued supporting character. Mew, the technomancer, Chinese-American technomancer that Bridge gets as a bodyguard. So I think one of the things that I might have brought up, but I don't remember if I did or not, in If Tribe Equal, when we're talking about Mew, was the fact that he had been a big participant in the arena battles, the global net arena battles, as a hacker. So he was a hacker before he became a technomancer. I came up with the idea of there being an underground circuit of global net arenas where hackers are getting kidnapped, essentially, and forced to fight out until they burn their brains out because they're not able to log out and their bodies just deteriorate and their minds eventually just lose it. Because I would imagine being in that much of a sensory deprivation for that long, physically you deteriorate, and if you're online that long and made to be awake and be connected and all that time, at some point your brain's just going to, like you don't have enough sleep, like when you don't have enough sleep. So that was my thought process behind the Connection Keep Alive is focus on Mew when he was in the arena and he had been kidnapped and was being forced to fight these battles, and to see how he could or if he could overcome that. And again, spoilers, because I'm talking about the end of the story. He learns how to get out of that, how to program around the block keeping him from logging out. And when he does, he discovers that the technomancers have basically rescued him. Wong, one of the technomancers that we met in No Circuit, rescues him, and he ends up becoming a technomancer. So real simple story, but just one that I wanted to do. I say real simple story, but I mean, the top line is real simple, but it's something where I wanted to give Mew a little more character, and perhaps in a way that I couldn't do in the middle of a book without it feeling out of place. And I believe I do reference some of that in long and short stories, and I know I talk about it a little bit in the book that I'm writing now. The Excavators, which was another idea I had, one of those morbid thoughts you get every once in a while. It's like, what if myself or my wife passed away, and you have to put their affairs in order when that happens. And I don't remember if anybody had passed away in my immediate circle or that I knew about at the time. I don't remember there being a death then. But it's just one of those thoughts I have. It's okay, so what do you do with all their online presence? Because, everybody has their passwords, and hopefully they have secure passwords, and hopefully they're not the same password on every single site they're on. But, for things like your bank, insurance, car notes, whatever you have these accounts set up, and they each have passwords and security. And if you don't share those passwords with your spouse, because you don't need to, I mean, they're dealing with their car payment, I'm dealing with my car payment, or I've got my bank account, she's got her bank account, that kind of stuff. If you don't deal with it, what happens when they suddenly pass away and you have to deal with all those things. And even more so, one of the things that I've always been interested in is the idea of online identity, which is in a lot of cases separate from our real identities. People will know my name, hopefully, because they bought my books and have seen that. But, there's certain places where I could just disappear one day, and maybe 2 years down the line, the folks that are in that community were like, hey, whatever happened to, and, I've had that with some communities that I've been in for a long time, where we discover that, one of the dudes that we knew This just happened recently, actually. One of the dudes we knew from way back, 20-something years, knew them online on the message board that we'd all been talking, about specific things, usually video games in this case, passed away. And I didn't even know the guy was actually younger than me, this particular person I'm talking about. So what happens then? And, if you don't have the password for your, significant other's Discord or message boards or, Twitch or whatever they're on, how do you let people know that may not know them in person, but know them well enough in an online community that person has passed away? So I came up with the idea for the Excavator. I think one of the impetuses for this story, or one of the inspirations for the story, was thinking about Bridge taking care of Angela's affairs after she passed, and keeping the mantle of the Baroness alive, so that people didn't know she was dead. Now, the Excavators, the theory was, this is a part identity thief, part forensic investigator, who, once the person has passed, they're given, here's what I know about this person's identity online. You break into it, and in the case of official GlobalNet excavators, because the GlobalNet would have to have, if everybody has a unique GlobalNet ID, they would have to have excavators to take care of that, and push that person, say, okay, this person is no longer active on the GlobalNet, and we can deactivate these accounts. We want to keep the history, but we can deactivate these things so that it's not taken over by somebody else and used, even though that is a good source of IDs for hackers on the GlobalNet. So an excavator, again, they will, the ones that are not official, which is the kind we're talking about in this short story, is one that will break into an account and then just kind of follow the trails to see where to try to get all the bits and bobs and pieces and all this for people on the GlobalNet. And in the case of this particular story, the deceased is a rich person, or at least a well-off person, and so there's the idea that not only is this person going to have things that the wife doesn't know about, just because to deal with, but he also may have hidden monies somewhere, and they basically want to claw all that stuff back, because it may not even be in the U.S. It may not be subject to banking laws. It may not be able to get it through probate. Of course, in this case, the ex-wife is kind of a vengeful person, and the girlfriend is the one who's supposed to inherit it all. And the girlfriend's the one who hires the excavator. And the excavator, looks around and finds, of course, she finds money that's hidden and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to, again, kind of explore that idea of someone that's in her case, in the excavator in the story, I say moral person, but maybe more so a moral choice. Is that, okay, the ex-wife and the girlfriend are fighting over money, basically. And the girlfriend does not want the ex-wife to get a damn cent, other than what she would get legally, that she just can't, keep from her. But she also wants to make sure that anything that was hidden that neither one of them knew about goes to the girlfriend and not to the wife. So that's why the excavator's hired. And in the course of discovering, looking through all the bits and pieces of this person's life, sifting through their history, she finds something else that at the time doesn't make sense, so she has to investigate it further. And I wanted to set up that moral choice when she really figures out what's going on, of the moral choice that she's given in the story. And I'm in this case, I'm actually not going to give away that part of the story, but that's just my thought process behind it, is that I really wanted there to be another character who is not a complete shit in the Bridge universe, so that we can actually see a decent character who has flaws, and of course is not, squeaky clean, but when presented with a choice, actually takes the good path. What I consider the good path. I know that sounds probably a little preachy, but I'm okay with that. Because again, the Bridge Chronicles is often about people who are completely broken and are amoral, in some cases just straight up what you would consider evil. And I always like to contrast that with somebody who maybe isn't so much, who actually has a conscience. and isn't just doing something completely for their own good or their own gratification. The story Initiate, you can actually say it initiate or initiate, depending on which way you want to go with what the story is about, is the tale of a trip-addicted hacker named Gunn who is found and trapped by the technomancers and given the choice. Either give up the drugs and become a technomancer and learn these things, see if you can learn these things and see if you can actually better yourself, or go back to the drugs. Will blast your brain and all this. And so I wanted to elucidate the training process, the initiate process of the technomancers, so that I could write about them a little bit more. And also, the Gun character actually he changes his name to Gunter in the end, and he is a character that appears in that original trilogy. And I wanted to write about that character. He actually is in the book I'm writing about now. He makes another appearance, and I'm glad I went back and read this before I really started writing most of his parts, because it actually has helped me with that new book, has helped me get a little more idea, a little more traction about what his role is and what's going to happen in the book. But the initiate part, as in start a program, is literally about the initiating of a creation of a new technomancer. So kind of a double use of the word depending on the pronunciation. As I was reading it or rereading it, it became clear to me that I had been kind of intimating, and really not even intimating, actually go out and say it, that Gunn actually has kind of a crush on Lydia through this whole thing, and Lydia being one of the Technomancer Council, and then discovering, oh yeah, she's in a relationship with Wong, even though they don't really talk about it much. But I actually think, having finished the story and read it, I was like, okay, yeah, I when I wrote it, I clearly meant to intimate that, and I think I did a good job of intimating that through, somewhat subtly. I say subtly, but it wasn't just like bang you over the head with it. It was a little more nuanced than I might have expected that I would have written it. So I really liked how I wrote it. But I also liked that the kind of the framing device of this story was Bridge. Is that Bridge was the guy who got Gunn the job that ended up getting him trapped by the Technomancers, and then at the end, Gunn sort of blames Bridge for being abducted and being turned against his will, and is like, now he has the power. If he wanted to, he could try to fight Mew and blast Bridge into non-existence. But does he have the ability to get over those things that that resentment that he would have had against Bridge, to the point where he just doesn't make an effort to kill him, or give him revenge? And some of that is actually going to be in the new book as well, I believe, as they come back together and meet again in a professional capacity, and have that discussion again, or have that full discussion that they don't have. That's just kind of the undercurrent of their talks at the end of this story. The last story in the book is called Giving, and it's one of those that I don't think I did it every year, but I did I wanted to write a Christmas story. And so Giving was a Christmas story. Not only that, I believe this is the first place where I really came up with the idea of putting Meat Locker into the Bridge universe. And I don't remember the timeline of whether I had started writing the stuff about Meat Locker separate from the Bridge stuff as kind of a noir detective story, or if I started writing the story after I came up with this character in this short story. Don't remember. Either one works. Meat Locker is in this story, and he's this is the first place where we actually see him, because again, this was written before Along with Short Swords, and Along with the Short Swords, I wanted to bring Meat Locker in a little bit more into the mainstream Bridge stuff. But this is Bridge being given almost an impossible task by Meat Locker. And Meat Locker's one of those guys you can't say no to in the LA underworld. He asks you to do something, you figure out a way to do it. And Bridge, does. The something in this case is give one of Meat Locker's hired killers, trained killers, a meeting with Santa in prison. And in typical Bridge fashion, it does not go as everyone would expect. It's another one of those stories where Bridge gets a little pissed off, either at how he's treated or at what he's being asked to do, and so he kind of passive aggressively fucks with it. Again, I won't give it away, but it's a typical Bridge Christmas story in that it is fucked up. Yeah, it's Christmassy. It takes place during Christmas, and there's Christmas, Santa Claus and all that, but it's not quite as, it's not the Hallmark Channel Christmas movies. So that's all I'll say about that one. The review of this short story collection. Now, again, I don't like short stories as a general rule. I tend to avoid them as collections and all that. However, that said, if you like the Bridge Chronicles universe and you want to just get a little more backstory and a little more exploration of smaller ideas that don't fit within a novel, or if you do like short stories and like short story collections, I think you'll enjoy this, because I think most of them are top notch. They're good 4-star stories, 4 to 5-star stories. The weakest, the weakest may actually be the early ones, the ones that I added to the original novels, but I don't think they're weak in any way. I think they're actually decent stories. I just didn't know how far to take them, or I knew I didn't want to take them very far. I didn't want to take a really long story because of what they were, what they were meant to be in. And obviously some of these, as I mentioned, are specifically about cyberpunk type tropes. And I may or may not have subverted the expectations of those stories well or at all. But, I was just taking some pot shots at some of those tropes and just, playing with them. Let's see what we got. Okay, we can put this together. I totally think it's worth reading. I think it's actually a pretty strong collection of stories. I called it Volume 1 at the time because I wanted to leave open the possibility that there could be a Volume 2. And I believe someday there probably will be a Volume 2. There actually was a Volume 2, and I'll talk about that when I get to my 5th Bridge novel, which is Reclamation. That actually started as Volume 2 of the Tales, and then I turned it into an actual full-length novel because it made sense. But again, I'll talk about that when I get to that video. That's my review. I think it's a solid piece of writing. I think it fits together as a good cohesive whole, even though the stories don't follow the same themes, but as here's other facets of this universe that you may have already liked in here. Here's some other things to do with that might give you a little more context for the universe later. I think it's fun. It's well worth reading. I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. We'll go with that. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed blathering on about it. I am the author, and this is my thoughts. Prequel stories are the dry hump of series.